Good evening, guys. Welcome to the webinar. Few people are still logging in, but it's close to 4, so I think safe to start now. First of all, thank you so much, Sridhar Vembu, for agreeing to come on ET Now's webinar. As the theme suggested, this is about how to create Atmanirbhar entrepreneurs like you. Now, Sridhar Vembu needs no introduction, but I'm still going to try because there are so many aspects to him. So he's managed to build a tech company that's valued at over $1 billion without raising a rupee of funding at a time when Series A and Series B is all the fad. We talk about unicorns and valuations. That's remarkable. The other thing is he doesn't work out of the Bay Area anymore. A few months back, he relocated to Tenkasi district, and he works out of a village there in Tamil Nadu. So that's where he runs a global software product firm from. There are many other aspects that I'm going to touch upon over the course of this webinar. But Sridhar, tell us where you're joining in from. How has it been running a global software product firm out of Tenkasi? What has changed for you? Sridhar, can you hear us? I think your frame has frozen. Okay, we're just going to try and get him back. I think there's a connectivity issue. So just give us a few minutes. Sridhar, can you hear us now?
Yeah. So, 1 second, can you see me now? Hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I had a little power glitch here. Now we have turned on the generator. So.
Okay, you've turned on the generator. Okay, so tell us to our viewers again where you're joining in from and the reason perhaps you face this power connectivity issue and the internet connectivity issue. Tell us where you're joining us from.
Yeah, I'm actually in a village about 25-30 kilometers from the town of Tenkasi, which is the district headquarters. We just recently became a district, but only about 4 or 5 months ago. It's not even that long ago. We were bifurcated out of the bigger Tirunelveli district here. And that now, we always had an office here, actually. We had an office about, from where this village is, about 20 kilometers. So, which is itself is about 10 kilometers from the town. So that's in another village. But I chose to live in a even remoter village, actually. It's smaller, remote village away from our office, even here. And I lived here and then commuted to work, actually. That was how I was working. And for the first winter since about September, October. And I would travel from here to go to the airport. Madurai airport is about 2.5, 3 hours by car. And you can go to Trivandrum by another 2 or 3 hours. So both Trivandrum and Madurai are actually equal distance for us. So that is where I chose to do it. And I always, 4Gen, I try to use 4G, see what works, what doesn't work. Even the generator, I only got it a few weeks ago, actually. Until then, I was making do with a inverter here. Then I realized that wasn't going to cut it. So I got actually a backup generator now, a small one, a Honda one. And so now I'm actually in business. Finally, I feel like this broadband is now actually it's much faster. Of course, I'm getting almost 100 megabit per second. Here's the interesting part. This is actually a better speed than what I got in California, which is, of course,
wow. That's amazing. That's something we should be proud about, that you're getting this kind of speed at a village 650 kilometers away from Chennai. And you're saying it's even better.
Of course, the problem is the last mile connectivity. You have to sweet talk them into doing this, and broadband providers are not, always willing. But sometimes you tell them, hey, we need this, and we are going to set up an office. You're going to get a commercial connection. They do it, actually. So that's how we got it done here. So.
Right. But why did you decide to move from Bay Area to Tenkasi? I know, this setup has been there for you In fact, through Zoho schools, you also train rural youth in programming and induct them in your company. So, guys, for those who don't know, it's very interesting because 15 to 20% of Zoho's engineering workforce are actually not engineers. They are young students handpicked from rural areas. They are trained in programming at their university, which is called Zoho schools, and then they're given employment in Zoho. So this has been a long running mission for you. Why did you have to relocate? And aren't you worried that you're not close to your clients, you're not close to the cutting edge of technology and product development, so to speak?
Yeah. So to back up, we have had this office for 10 years now in Tenkasi. Now it's about 450 people strong, approaching 500 with this year's new Zoho school training batch. And we have put down deep roots in this area. In fact, our employees are located all over the area now. We draw our people, other support staff from the surrounding villages, all of that. So everywhere here, you go here, people generally come to know Zoho. So they may not use Zoho, they don't have broadband, they don't have a need for the cloud, but they know Zoho here in this area. But we are probably already the largest employer, private sector employer in this district now. And so it's already all these are true. And I decided we are going to speed up this experiment, go even more deeply rural, and go to even smaller villages and see how this works. Because I actually told our employees, we have to go deeper, and the Tenkasi experiment itself has been successful. We want to take it further. That's what I told about. This has been like about a year. I've been thinking about this well before the pandemic. That was not the consideration. And reasons were we were drawing staff from variety of places, other small towns, and we are bringing them to Chennai. And I didn't want to do that because Chennai is overcrowded. I said, when people ask me, why don't you set up in Bangalore? I said, do you need our traffic in addition to the traffic you already have there?
Not anymore.
Why are you so cruel to yourself, right? That's what I say. Do you really want our jobs to add to already the traffic in the streets there? So we have to be kind to ourselves, we spread ourselves out a little bit. So this is social distancing before it became the norm, right? In other words, we can stay more friends if we don't all crowd into 1 square mile somewhere, right? So that is the idea behind this. And I actually wanted our employees to be able to live this type of a life, unhurried pace. And it's actually a rural life is not too often. And if you get the broadband, the electricity connection, all of this right? That is the key stuff. And that's broadly there. It's not, I was able to get my work done even before this thing. And it's just that it will glitch more. There were glitches now and then. But now I have a much better connectivity. So that was the cause. And I felt that given that we are investing in the training and we could train anybody. In fact, we now have actually already a small training group in this village now going on, where we are training in some of our products, and we have hired some people already on just interns right now. So we are going to establish a small group here, about 20 people. And that's actually why I got a very fat pipe. I have more bandwidth than I need now because we are going to put an office here. So, and this is already we have about 7 or 8 such offices in the works, like this, very much like this one. And that is going to have, we are going to observe this, how it goes, and then we are going to expand a lot more. And we actually, the few months of work from home has taught one thing, that technically the work can be done. People don't need the social engagement. Doesn't mean they need to be in 2,000 people campus, but they need the 20 people they regularly meet, interact, exchange ideas, share a coffee, all of those things. So those are the kinds of things an office really helps. And that in a rural setting, that office has even more value because we can have, some open space around to take a walk and maybe some, nature trails around, all of that. We can actually do a lot more nice things to our employees if you're in a rural area. So that was
right. Sridhar, in fact, a lot of people are logging in and saying hi to you, and somebody said that they are trying a similar experiment all the way up in the Himalayas. So that's interesting. But guys, for those who just joined in, we just began about 4-5 minutes ago. Sridhar was recounting why he moved from Silicon Valley to the village in Tamil Nadu, and he's talking about empowering youth there. But Sridhar, tell me something. You packed up, left the US and came to Tamil Nadu. Was your family supportive? Were they willing to kind of
Yeah,
follow you here, or that took a lot of difficulty and convincing?
yeah, that's broadly that is. I have a son with autism. That was the challenge. That was the one reason that we could not do it before. But now he's grown up and he's getting better. So I think it is now. It's the transition zone right now, but we will end up all moving in the next. In fact, during the pandemic, nobody could visit. I couldn't visit them. They couldn't visit me. But now it's going to happen. So all of this we are uh, in the process of moving everything, lock, stock, and barrel. So, and I wanted to
Right.
set
Hi.
a base on here first. I wanted to come here and first learn how to be living here in the rural India. And because I've been mostly urban based for a long time now. So I reconnected back to my rural roots from my childhood. And I should say I adapted quite easily. It is now, it's cities that's going to be a problem for me. Readapting to cities is going to be a problem for me now.
Right. But see, Sridhar, in your case, you grew up in a family of farmers in Tanjore, right? And then you went on to IIT Madras and Princeton before going to Qualcomm, and then you started up your own company. But tell us about your schedule. What does the daily schedule of Sridhar Vembu look like today? Um, how does your day start? How do you handle client meetings? How do you connect with your employees? Because you said you're in an even more remote part of the village than your office. So, what does
Yes.
your schedule look like?
Yeah. So I usually my days begin very early, 3:30 or 4. I've just got used to waking up very early, and my brain works very well during the early morning hours. So and I get to work very quickly. Actually, within I wake up and I'm off to work immediately. So I get probably a solid 3-4 hours of work in the very early mornings. And you might occasionally see me on the weekends meeting the early mornings too. That's my usual schedule. That very early morning, I do the thinking and reading and maybe even some software work, all of that. And then later on, and I go for a walk and I go around here and I take a swim in the well here, all of that. So I'm actually quite, I enjoy the rural mornings. That is like my special time to not to disconnect. Okay. I try not to take the phone with me, but sometimes I end up doing it too, right? That's a bad habit. So I try to keep the phone down and then just go for a walk. And usually I do a lot of exercise in the mornings, maybe about between about 7 and 8:39, you'll find me out. And that's a beautiful morning time for a walk, all of that. Then I come back and our employees have started coming into work and then we connect. We have usual, our company actually does not do too many formal meetings. Okay. So we are very light on these excessive formality in the company because I myself don't like it. That's the reason. So if they pull me into too many meetings, I protest. I say, no, I don't want to be in these so many meetings. So we don't have a heavy meeting culture in Zoho. And that actually is a blessing. And that leaves me a lot of relatively open slots of time that I get to interact with our product teams. I get to actually even write some code and work on some technology and talk to various people around, including interact with customers, whether in Twitter or in our support, all of these. Sometimes I handle a support escalation from customers. All of these kinds of work takes up. And usually by late evening, I'm very tired. I mean, I've had a long day starting at 4 a.m. And that by about 7 or so, I'm kind of pretty much knocked out. I want to sleep early. So usually by 9 o'clock, I'm out. Okay, when it's dark. So I'm actually and this is typical village culture here. People also here sleep early, rise very early in these spots. They'll notice that by 9 p.m., all lights, everything is out. But people are up very early. 5 a.m., there is some activity. So that's been my schedule also here. So very typical village schedule.
Right. But were your clients okay with this, having a remote CEO working out of India? Were they okay? Now, of course, the pandemic has made this the new normal, but you
Yeah,
did this sometime in October
yeah.
2019. So were they open to it?
I always have calls, and in fact, February I made a visit to the US just before the pandemic. So I had some meetings there, So I would have gone probably every at least 2-3 months once for visits. But now due to the pandemic, all of us are stuck in place. So there is no travel at all, right? I've been here for now more than 4 months. So once travel becomes possible, I'm pretty sure I'm going to travel. I have to travel. But it's so far so good. And at least, see, because it kind of coincided with this whole pandemic and all of this, and a lot of other people are thinking about this. This is not now what I've been doing is becoming kind of a normal now. It's not like abnormal, right? So it's not a problem. And I have had like every week, I have at least a couple of calls with US based either customers or analysts. Last week we had an analyst meet. And Australia, I've had calls with journalists, all of that. So it works fine, provided my broadband cooperates. It goes smoothly. It's never a problem. So.
Right. Sridhar, I also want to understand in the initial part, you spoke about, the youth and the young employees you have, how they are kind of adapting to rural life, how it could be a change of scene for them. But with millennials, don't you think their attention span, their boredom threshold is also very low? So how long before, they get the urge to kind of be in a city again? Because there are only so many things you can do in, say, a rural office. Even if you want to switch to another company, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
The options you have are limited. Entertainment options are limited. So do
Yeah.
you really see this sustaining over a long period of time?
Yeah. First, you have to remember, there's a lot of people already here. It's not like people have to move. People I'm hiring here are local. Most of our employees in Tenkasi grew up here in the region, broader region, maybe 50-kilometer radius. So they already grew up here, and they want to be at home, right? I mean, you ask the kids in this village, do you like this village? They'll say, yes, we like it. Would you like to move to a city? Many of them have seen cities. They'll say, oh, no, too crowded. In fact, one of the stock answers you'll get is too crowded, right? So these kids actually enjoy being here. In fact, most people who leave these villages actually go unwilling. And in fact, that was my experience in childhood too. I would unwillingly go to the city. I wouldn't willingly go. I would resist coming back to the city. So it's not, and that attitude is pervasive, a lot of people. In fact, due to the COVID, a lot of people came back to the village. I got flooded with resumes here, actually. A lot of people show up and say, I want a job. And they were in Mumbai, and they were in Bangalore, all of these places. They've come home because of COVID, and they would like to stay home. They don't want to go back. And so it is not, all the options aside, this is what the reality is. So I'll put it this way, maybe 50% of the world splits 50-50. 50% of the people really like their cities. 50% of us really like the rural areas. Both can be happy. That's how I'll put it. So that's how I think about the problem.
Okay, we're getting a lot of questions in the Q&A window, so I'm going to start asking some of these questions. But I first also want to address the questions that I already got, while we announced the webinar. This is all the way from Dubai. This is from Sridhar. He wants to know the mistakes that you have made in your early days when you started the business, and 3 things that any new startup should be aware of to avoid in the first 3 years of operation.
Yeah. It's in the beginning, your tendency is, at least some of us, is to think maybe too small. Maybe that is one of the early mistakes would be that you could be thinking too large or too small, both kinds of mistakes. In our case, we probably were too timid in the beginning, early days, having no experience, having nothing to go on. We didn't actually I would say in hindsight, we were not sufficiently ambitious probably in the very early days. But that also was because you are doing it for the first time and you don't have actually experience. You don't know how this works and you don't have any money. And there was no VC. I mean, VC was not that easy at that time. So that was all of that played into it. So I would say that was probably if we were to do it again, maybe we'll be a little more ambitious early on. But the second, I would say, for example, speaking for myself, I didn't actually grasp the full potential of the internet early on, maybe as in 95, 96. It wasn't as obvious then. And so we actually entered more, we could have been, even earlier in the cloud. Maybe as of 97, we'd be in the cloud. But We actually ended up taking another 4 or 5 years to get into it. So that was a thing that, in hindsight, you can always say, we could have done it even sooner, a lot of these things. But those are the kinds of things that say, we could have done somewhat differently. But what I would tell a young entrepreneur always is that it's focus on some immediate, what is relevant opportunity so that you can get a foothold. Meaning it's like climbing a cliff in a way. You need to find your footing. You ought to find something to hold on to. Okay. And it's like, and sometimes, when you're climbing too steep a cliff, you want to think alternative pathways. Maybe there is an alternative path that is not too steep, because there is no glory in climbing too steep a cliff and then falling down and dying. So staying alive is actually glorious, right? Actually, a lot of people don't, particularly many young people are prone to thinking of somehow a death-defying stunt as glorious. And I actually don't agree with it. I wasn't that way even when I was 25. I was pretty cautious about these things. I don't want to get myself killed, I think, and taking stupid risks, right? I mean, you should take calculated risks, but there's no point in taking stupid risks that will get you killed with a very high probability, right? So that the analogy, the image I have in mind is, you want to climb this cliff. Obviously, you want to scale the summit, but is there a pathway that you can weave through that doesn't get you killed? That's always the goal of anybody climbing a cliff, right? So how do you stay alive? How do you hold on to something? Find the footing. So that is how I describe the problem. And charting that course for the cliff is actually the challenge here. Always the real entrepreneurial challenge is, how do you chart that? And there is always all these falling rocks here. There's all these to throw you off course, sometimes completely make you fall down. All of those things. So you have to navigate your course carefully. That's how that it works. And so you have to have a temperament to stay calm during difficult times. A lot of those are helpful.
Right. How did you cultivate that temperament, Sridhar? The temperament to stay calm, as you described it. I mean, it needs a lot of resilience to be there. Zoho, since Advent, you started out as Advent in 1996. You're still relevant as Zoho today, 24 years later. So how do you stay relevant? How do you stay resilient at a time when technology is changing and evolving so fast? How do you cultivate that temperament?
Yeah. So that it's, this particular part is not really business. It's more spiritual, it's personal, all of that. And if you are calm against adversity in your normal life, you would stay calm in business too. When you face challenges in life, everybody faces challenges. And for that, it's actually useful to look at people as role models who are calm in general, no matter what they're. You find a very calm school teacher. You find a calm auto driver, okay? A person who actually, I have seen people like that who stay calm under a lot of pressure. We come across them every day. I say they are the Buddhas we come across every day without realizing they're Buddhas, okay? We see these people and you want to learn from that. You want to learn, how does this person stay calm in this circumstance? And if you can do that, but that is the same thing we want to apply in business. It is a spiritual practice and it's not, there is not, I wouldn't say there's some kind of a business magic here. It's first you need to analyze the problem. You have to understand where you are and all of that, but not losing yourself in this, not losing your head. And that I actually take inspiration. In fact, my sister knows, I often tell her, I met a Buddha today. And she'd say, who? That lady who's selling the flowers there, she's a Buddha, I tell her. And that is actually a real example. I actually have seen, seriously. Because there are Buddhas around us, we don't actually see them, we don't notice them. And it's worth learning from them.
Right. And Sridhar, a couple of questions that came up on the chat window, I'll quickly address those.
Yeah.
If somebody said, how do I really go about looking for funding for a software product firm? Now, interestingly, you built a company without raising any money at all. So why did you choose to do that? And what would your advice be to an entrepreneur who's starting up a software product firm, a SaaS firm, who's perhaps looking for guidance on funding?
Yeah. So this is again a personal question. I don't want to give advice as though it's like universal, everybody should do it this way, all of these. All I would say is that funding always comes with strings attached. there are expectations. And the biggest expectation is, of course, that you will have an exit or a liquidity event in some finite amount of time, say 8 years or 10 years. That's very typical. So if you take funding in 2020, there is an expectation that you will have a liquidity event in 2030 or 2028 or some such number of years. And that is often a very difficult to guarantee for any entrepreneur, because you already have a lot of business risks. You already have a lot of unknown unknowns, as the saying goes. And on top of that, you have a finite clock ticking on you. And that adds to the pressure. And in fact, part of the reason a lot of people are harried and they don't have the patience is you cannot have the patience. You actually are under the gun. In fact, I look back from 1996, if I look back to 2006, we had to provide an exit in 2006. We were not all that great. We had not done anything significant to give an exit at that point. And if we had taken the company public in 2006 or acquired it, it wouldn't have been worth a lot. It wouldn't have been a great company yet. So there was a lot of work we had to do still. In fact, Zoho itself was born only in 2005 or 6, and that has become the mainstay now of the company. And yet in 2006, it was barely there. So that is, and again, this was 11 years or 10 years into the journey. So that tells you that you are, patience is one of the things that when you take funding is hard to come by. In fact, the pressure is to grow faster still. And some people can take it, most actually cannot. In fact, most people who think they can take it actually end up regretting it afterwards, because it's just hard on you. And I've met entrepreneurs who have sold companies simply because they couldn't take the pressure anymore. They took funding, the pressure, constant quarter to quarter, the pressure got onto them and they finally end up selling. And then they end up even regretting, maybe I shouldn't have sold. I should have continued to run it. But at that moment, they were kind of flustered by all the pressure. So these kinds of things are common. So I would say, evaluate all your options and what works for you. If you are able to, in other words, what I would suggest, don't think of funding as a celebratory event, at least, because you have to provide a return. So in effect, you are in a sense borrowing to repay in some sense. And I don't know why that's a big achievement. You should think of how your business milestones, your revenue, your first customer, your 100th customer, your first $1 million revenue, all of those are milestones. Funding itself shouldn't be, to me, a quiet event. That's how I see it.
It's the exact opposite. But quickly, love your thoughts on economics. Can you recommend 2-3 books that just came up on the chat window?
Yeah. So the reason why I have to do economics thinking is that a lot of our business questions also translate into economics questions. Where is the course of the world now? Where is globalization heading? All this is very relevant to us. I mean, 94% of our revenue is clocked outside of India now. I mean, 90 plus, well above 90%. And where is it heading? Where is the globalization process? All of this is relevant to our business. And today, the way the world is run doesn't give me a lot of confidence in the top level decision makers in the world, to be honest. Whether it's the top institutions like the Federal Reserve, all of these. As a businessman, I don't have a lot of confidence in these decision makers on the way they have run things. And that means you have to do our own independent thinking. Where is this heading? And that is how I got into economics, really. And I come from a sort of a very fundamentals from the bottom-up approach, sort of the micro to macro. And I have actually serious quarrels with the way economics is even taught and practiced. And I can say this with some confidence that most of what they teach as academic economics has to be wrong, just plain wrong. It doesn't compare with any reality that I see in the world. And as an example, I mean, take these villages. Our problem in this village is that we sell very low value commodities. We buy the higher value goods. For example, even a refrigerator or a motorcycle or a smartphone, all of these seriously set back the villager, and they don't have enough of high value things to sell. So they have to migrate, or they have to go into debt, or they have to sell off their lands, all of the above. They migrate, they go into debt, they sell their lands in order to fund their, the necessities of living today, right? To buy a refrigerator or to buy I just talked to a farmer who bought a a simple scooter, about 1 lakh. And he told me he had to take a loan to pay for the scooter. And now if his next crop is not very good, he is in trouble. So this is the type of thing people have to get into in order to afford that scooter or a smartphone or any of these. This is a value mismatch. The village is not producing enough value, things of value. That directly led me to the thing that we have to create those kind of high value creating jobs to balance out the trade. That we have to create these jobs in the village and pay people better so that we are able to actually balance out the trade. So that is where I start my economic thinking. So the first notion is balance. The second notion is symmetry. Symmetry is a very important concept for me because if we sell one kind of good in extreme and we import everything else, your economy this is like the oil exporter economy, and that is also extremely non-resilient. When oil prices crash, those nations are in serious trouble. And so you cannot rely on one commodity to fund your entire life. Even if you are very rich doing that, you still want a diversified local economic base, which is even Middle Eastern nations are doing it right now. They are thinking about it. They realize the problem. They're trying to build know-how internally. So that means that there has to be a symmetry in trade as well. That means what the kind of goods you sell, you have to have the expertise to, the similar goods. You have to be able to make the similar kinds of goods that you are buying. So you have to have some symmetry in your too. If you buy advanced know-how goods, you have to be able to sell some advanced know-how goods. So those are some of the ideas. So the balance and symmetry are very core tenets for me. And I have not seen an economic school that emphasizes these particular aspects because you have to erect it from a foundation of, like, you look at a community, you look at a village, you look at a district, you look at a state, and then build it up. But we are starting global down today, where one city will specialize in all of the socks in the world. All of the violence will be made by another city. And this is done in the name of hyper-specialization. And I don't think that actually works. This is the extremely fragile state of affairs. If all the masks, all the ventilators are made by one city somewhere, how resilient is that system? We are already finding out the problem. So we have to distribute the productive know-how, the skills, all of that. And that creates a much more resilient economic system, which goes to the notion of wealth. To me, wealth itself has to be connoting resilience and the ability to withstand adversity and self-reliance broadly. Self-reliance to me does not mean that you are self-sufficient in everything. It means that you are able to trade on equal footing. We sell software, maybe we buy phones, that's equal footing. We only get to sell rice. We have to buy everything else like motorcycles and phones. That's not very equal footing. So that is what I emphasize.
Right. Sridhar, since you spoke about self-reliance and we are talking about how to build Atmanirbhar entrepreneurs, if someone were to replicate what you have done, or not even replicate, if someone wants to start up today and right out of a place in India, no reliance on funding, reliance on a local model, what would your suggestion be to them? Is it easier to start a business to business, a B2B business in India vis-a-vis B2C? Because B2C, it just needs so much of funding, right from customer acquisition cost to retention to creating lifetime value. So is it easier to start a B2B enterprise today in India? What is your take? How does one do this brand of Atmanirbhar entrepreneurship today?
I would think the problem somewhat differently. I mean, ultimately, I preach this here in the village. I actually teach this to people here. I say, let's look at all the things we use on an everyday basis. Let's look at which of those things we can start off making here. What could we make that we use every day? That's the question I ask. Let's catalog all the items, household items. Let's see what we can make. That is essentially B2C, but you can actually see that some of those things are maybe not so complicated after all. But I talked to one person, he said, I think I know somebody who knows how to make these, and this may not cost more than 30 lakhs type of thing. So that is where in investment, 30 lakhs in investment. So that is actually the type of thinking I want you to do. So thinking as B2C, B2B terms, it is what is essential for life right now. What are the things that are going on around us? What needs can we fulfill? And obviously, when you're starting out, these cannot be very complicated things. I cannot start out thinking that I'll make a semiconductor chip in this village. That's not a realistic way to begin. But you know what? Maybe I can go into some component thereof. Maybe I can sell some small library, some core. I can have a small design team that designs some parts for it. So those kinds of thoughts are more viable. And once you get some experience and know-how and capital is the accumulated savings in this case, then you are actually able to embark on more ambitious projects. So that is how I would start. And I'll give you examples. I mean, I'm using a modem right now. The modem is not a very complicated device and for the fiber. And those kinds of things could be made by rural enterprises, actually. These don't need to be made in gigantic factories, all of that. So those could be sold locally as well. So it's very much possible to do this in smaller scale, but you have to think different. You have to think from the foundation and have an understanding of cost. Do an exhaustive today. Sitting on my computer now, I can do research for next 3 days and get a really good picture of a particular industrial segment and talk to people, all of that. Then start with that and then go from there, bottom up. That is how I would do it.
Right, right. And Sridhar, the other thing that I wanted to know was how difficult or how easy is it to retain high quality talent without ESOPs? How are you doing that? I mean, the fact you said, at least the people in the village, they are people who want to stay there, live there, work there. So from a retention point of view, that might help. But overall, how are you doing this?
Yeah. So as our company has done well, we actually have a very good bonus program. We have always rewarded people well over the years. And there is one thing true in all this though, right? If your only reason to work for you is the potential for monetary reward, you're not actually going to retain people very long in spite of providing the monetary reward. That's actually always been true. In other words, if your only value you offer somebody is money, and even if you give them the money, they are not going to stick with you. You want to have something, this is the whole thing, right? Man does not live for bread alone. That's actually true, really true. And people want fulfillment from their jobs. People want a lot of things that go into what makes somebody satisfied. So all of this you have to offer. And of course, money too. See, I'll tell you something about money. It's not the absolute quantity of money people are as obsessed about as, am I able to live reasonably well? And is the system fair to me? Is the system fair? That's a more, see, human beings are programmed to think of fairness more than just absolute quantities. And for example, in Wall Street, you could make $100 million a year and feel very bad that I got unfairly treated because somebody else made $200 million a year. Okay, that's true. It happens, right? You get disputes like that in Wall Street.
Yeah.
On absolute terms, they're making $100 million a year. But on relative terms, they think I'm making too low. There is no amount of money that's enough, right? $100 million a year is a lot of money, as I say. So that is why I say that it's not only that. It's beyond all that. And even in Silicon Valley, in the US, there are many, many private companies that are well known. And so it is actually possible to attract and retain talent. We actually do a much better job of talent retention than a lot of companies that are private, that are public, that are VC funded, all of that, which tells you that it cannot be only the reason of, they hand out the prospect of instant riches. That is not actually the reason why people stick with you. And we have seen that in experience. And fulfillment,
Right.
Overall fulfillment is a very important part of why somebody stays in a job.
Right. Two more questions from the Q&A window. One person wanted to know, what were you doing when you were 23 years old? The other person says, do you have political ambitions and will you join hands with Rajnikant? I don't know what Rajnikant himself is planning to do because, that has been like Varuma Varada kind of situation. But tell us what you make of both these things.
I'll be very clear. I don't have any political ambition. I have enough work right now as creating technologies, creating jobs, all of that. So no way I'm going into politics anytime soon. I do have political views. That doesn't mean I want to be in active politics.
I was coming to that. You got into trouble because you have very strong political views.
Yes, of course
one wing identifies you with them.
Yeah. So, and I'll come to the 23-year-old question first. And I was in my PhD program then, and I actually was directionless. That is the way I would describe myself. I knew something was wrong. I wasn't really enjoying it, but I didn't know what was wrong, and I didn't know what else I should be doing. And honestly, the thought that I would actually become a business person, that never entered my head at that time. That wasn't in a plan, actually. But I knew that I'm unhappy in this. I don't like this. I was doing well in it. But I was not liking it. I didn't like the work. I didn't like what I was doing, but I was directionless. I was kind of drifting along. In fact, a lot of times now when people tell me I'm depressed, all of that, I identify with that because I know what it is to be in a sort of a goalless, directionless drift in life. Even though supposedly, outwardly, it looks all good. Okay. Outwardly, it was, I'm in Princeton, I'm doing a PhD program, all of that. But I was deeply unhappy inside. And I only later I figured out that that wasn't my life's calling. And I'm stuck in something. I found myself in something that wasn't my calling. And once I got out of it, I became happier. So it was clear to me later. But that was my 23-year-old self. If I could speak to that self, I would just say, get out right now. That's what I would say. You'd be happier, right?
But you have a PhD, so that's not a bad deal. Okay, one person has asked, this is an interesting one. So no political ambition, Sridhar, despite having very strong, defined political views and getting into trouble for it as well.
Yeah, I'll be very clear, right? I have strong political views from childhood. Okay, I have always, for example, I was only 7 or 8 years old when there was the emergency. I was 75. I was born in 68. I do remember the blacked out newspapers, all that. The newspaper column would be blank. This actually happened. Okay, so for people to talk dictatorship and all that bullshit, there was actually dictatorship in our country, and that was a time newspapers were censored. And I remember this because the Tughlaq magazine would come with, blank stuff in it. Okay, so it was being censored. So that was the time those were my memories. And I actually was staunchly anti-emergency then because I didn't like these newspapers being censored this way. Okay, so that was my formational memory, we can say. And so you can see that my defined political views were formed very early from childhood. Okay, because I'm reading these newspapers, I'm reading Tughlaq, I'm reading Cho Ramaswamy, I'm reading later when I could start reading English in the 80s, I was reading Arun Shourie. So I had, strongly formed views from then. But I wasn't really, I'm not a politician, and I actually don't have a particular taste for government, running things in government, and I don't think I would be very good at it. So I actually want to stay what I do well, which is try to create technology, infrastructure, technology jobs, and try to satisfy customers. So that is my calling. I'm going to stick to it. But I also say this, all of us are citizens. We have to take active part in the way we are governed. That's important. And we have also a public contribution to make, particularly those of us who are fortunate to have the resources to do it. So all of that, we have to do it. We have to take part. I don't consider politics to be dirty, because if politics is dirty, then we will always be only governed by dirty people, right? So that means you have to actually have a respect for people who do this. I do. I actually do respect politicians, and I often tell them their job is a lot tougher than my job. Okay, regardless of political party, it's a tough job. So I actually do have respect for politicians, and it's a difficult look. Ours is a vast country with 1.3 billion people, with so many different diversity of things, opinions, divisions, and things work so broadly. And so we have to be thankful for our system of governance. And things will get better, but we have to play our part. So one of the things that I don't like to do is sitting in the back seat and simply throwing stones at people who govern. That I don't like to do, regardless of who governs. I actually like to be a constructive participant. Even if I criticize, it will be constructive. That maybe we can do these things better. And finally, I never like to personalize it. Okay, there's no point in doing personal attacks on anybody. And so those are my cardinal principles of my political thinking.
Right. Right. Couple of questions in the Q&A window. How does one enroll for Zoho School? This is coming from, I think, a 19 or a 20-year-old person. Another person wants to know if they can meet you if they are in Tenkasi. Is that possible?
Of course.
And another
Yeah.
person wanted to reach out to you through email. So tell us about all this.
Yeah, the Zoho Schools of Learning, there is a website. We take applications, and this year the admissions are already over, but we keep the thing open so you can apply and you can tweet at us, contact us. Somebody will always be in touch with you. So that's it's fairly easy process. We don't make it difficult to get into Zoho Schools of Learning. We want to keep it as open as possible. Okay, we can go through tests, all of that, but it's really an open system. And we actually, unlike many other famous colleges, we don't emphasize a lot of the grades, all of that. We don't obsess about all this. But there are kids who join us who actually even sometimes flunk out their 12th grade or never finish it, and we are okay with it. So if they have some particular talent, we would take them in anyway. So that's Zoho University. And I'm here. Always people come visit me once in a while if you're in the area. But I mean, due to COVID, now there's serious restrictions now, travel all over. But hopefully this will be someday get over this thing, and then we can meet actually. And we get visitors to our Tenkasi office. I host them. I've had actually visitors from Japan here, from the US here. So I'm happy to host visitors from anywhere here, and we'll go around the area. You can see how rural this whole area is. It's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful area. And what was the last question again? You said
if they want to get in touch with you for guidance on their startup or product.
And actually, it's fairly easy to reach me on Twitter or any of these. I try to be as much interaction as possible. These days I'm getting swamped with a lot of emails and requests, so I'm not able to attend to all of them. I still have not hired a personal assistant. Okay, I still answer my own emails. I don't know how long I can do this because the volume is growing and growing and growing. Sometimes I feel swamped. There are days I feel very exhausted because I've just, there's still so many things to do. So at some point I have to give in and actually hire someone to help me to respond to all of this. I've not done it yet.
Okay. And Sridhar, the other thing that people are asking is about where you see Zoho going over the next 10 years, because it's had such a different arc, right? For the first decade, it was about servicing network equipment vendors, network management. Then you kind of refocused your attention on cloud-based apps. You have over 40 of them. You have an entire suite of products. So what's the next decade going to look like for you?
Yeah. So we are deepening our cloud investments. We are building infrastructure. We actually just a few months ago, we launched our platform. So we are getting into the platform as a service. We launched something called Zoho Catalyst. That's our serverless platform. So that's our first foray into the platform business. We are building data centers. We are starting to open that up as cloud infrastructure services. So you will see a deeper thing there as we expand our infrastructure footprint over the next 5 years. And we are working on many, many new products offerings. In fact, probably if we have this meeting in another month or two, definitely it will happen on Zoho meeting. So it's scaling up very, very well. So we are actually very proud of what already has been achieved. In the next couple of months, it looks like it will scale up massively. So we will have a really strong meeting software soon. That is actually a critical priority. The whole audio, video, remote work tools. You will see a lot more of the remote work as a theme coming up. We also may make foray into new markets that we are studying right now. So we are studying about what areas where we can apply our technology know-how. And of course, you saw the LTE modem signal chip that our affiliate company launched, and that is also going strong. And we are planning some work with them on hardware, software, code designs, all of those. So there's a lot of work going on. I keep myself very busy too.
One question in the Q&A window, what would your pro tips be for youth broadly?
Yeah. So if you're a young person, if I were 25, if I were 20 now, I would see the opportunities to educate yourself, opportunities to think for yourself are enormous today, more than ever before. The resources, meaning look at the internet, look at all the things online, YouTube, all of that in a positive way. How to upgrade your own skills, to learn and to discover your true passions, what you really are good at. All of these opportunities are tremendous today. So first, whatever area you get into, get in deep. Don't just declare I'm interested in this. Be good at it. Get yourself, train yourself in it. Train yourself. And I would emphasize, I actually tell people all the time. In fact, I gave this advice just yesterday to one of our employees who came and asked my advice. I said, the ability to manage your own time is probably the biggest thing. Manage yourself. You are a young person. If you expect me to provide you management, you are not going to grow. You are not children. You are not a child. You are actually an adult. You ought to be able to manage yourself. How do you manage yourself? That is what I would always ask. And that's actually harder than it sounds. Because a lot of times we set goals, but we are not really committed to them. We don't spend the time. We simply waste the time, fritter away the time in various activities. Later we regret. We look back and say, I completely wasted the time. So it is important to actually have whatever you decide to do, have commitment. And then the next question arises, how do I decide what to do? That's actually a question for a lot of people too. Then I would say this, in general, if your goal is something that is an ego gratification alone, you'll find it dissatisfying long term. If your goal is something where you actually have something you are serving someone and serving some cause bigger than yourself, that is a long-lasting love that actually tends to be something that gives you energy for a long period. So discover things where your egoic self is not the center of everything. That, how I become great is not a good way to think about life, because then it actually, it becomes self-obsession, narcissism, all of those problems arise. But if you are able to think, how do I help these people? And who are in, for every one of us who is listening to this, there's so many people who are in a much worse position in life than us. If we are able to help somebody, if we make that a part of our life goals, our life turns out to be good. That's what I think. And the reason for that is you actually don't maximize your own problems. You tend to put them in perspective compared to the other people's problems. Then, and one of the interesting things about life is that if you are very needy and you are very clingy, nobody wants you. If you are helping others, everybody wants you. So if you are actually yourself not very needy person, everybody wants you. So it's a kind of a reverse of, it's just like VCs. If you don't need money at all, they will come and force money on you. So the best way to even have VC money is to not need the money.
So play hard to get.
Not play hard to get, actually, not really needing the money, then you will get a lot of money. That's what is really interesting.
Right. Sridhar, people also, they want to know about rural distress. Has your creation of employment there alleviated that to a certain extent? And the profile of youth that you employ, are they from middle income, lower income families? So briefly on that, if you can touch upon. And the second part is, how do you stay motivated? And what role does spirituality play for you in order to stay motivated and kind of stay the course?
Yeah. So I want to be very modest about what we have done. We have done a lot in Tenkasi, but to the scale of the problem here, this is a district with 1.4 million people. We have employment impact on about 1,000, maybe a couple of thousand people. So take it to the scale of 14 lakhs versus 2,000 people who maybe benefited from our work here. So it's still, you can see the scale of this here. So I want to be very clear. And when I come to this village, I see a tremendous need. In fact, I see, for example, I've made a friend here who's a family who actually are cow herds and goat herds. They go grazing every day. When I go for a walk, I meet them. I end up talking about their life. The sad part, they actually don't want their cows. They take a loan to find their cows. And if there's one cow goes missing, that's a serious crisis because they have a loan to repay. And I've been thinking about how do you solve these kinds of problems. So because I know their problem, I know them, I know their family, all of that. So these are the kinds of things that I want to have some impact. And all I can say is that if each one of us who are able, who's in this webinar, is able to do this for even one person, our country, our society would be a lot better. So maybe take 1% and you see what you can do to help here in these. That could even be simple advice. I'll give you another example. A lot of people are in this, even people who are daily income people have debt where if you just have 1 week's worth of savings, they will get out of debt. So we want to teach them for that and maybe provide that 1 week worth of money up front and don't take any interest. Then they get out of their debt, they repay their debt and teach them how to stay off of debt. That's actually very important because in these rural areas, the going interest rate is about 5% a month, 5 to 6% a month. And they tell me it used to be 10%, it has come down now. But that is the level of interest people are paying. Yeah. So that is, all those are the problems that I want to have, hope to have some impact. The critical thing is jobs. Absolutely, the critical thing is jobs. The mirror image of that is that we consume things we are not able to produce. So why don't we have jobs? Because we consume things we are not able to produce. It's just absolutely symmetrical. These are two sides of the same coin. So if you want, if the jobs are nothing but our own consumption that we have to be able to produce here. So that's what I'm also trying to, jumpstart some efforts here. And I'm trying to do all this, but then the COVID, because of pandemic, nobody is able to visit, travel, if engineers have to come here, a lot of issues now. So everything is sort of in the drawing board. Things are not moving fast enough. And when I try to do something also, I get warning that, hey, there is a COVID infestation there. Do you want to get infected? People want me. So I have to then, take it easy a little bit. So that's what is really happening.
Yeah. The other part on how you stay motivated, does your spirituality kind of anchor you?
Yeah, there's actually something Steve Jobs said that is very relevant here. And remember, he had a background in Indian spirituality too. He visited India as a very young man. He said the thought that surely I'm going to die one day is actually a very liberating thought. That means that I actually visualize my own death and I'm no longer afraid. And that's something that is deep in Indian spirituality. This is actually there in Hinduism, this is there in Buddhism, and the Jains know about this. So it is actually deep in our roots that we are able to accept that we are going to die, and it's not something fearful we are afraid of, all of that. And the whole vibhuti that we have in South India, in India, the thing we wear on our forehead, that is actually the ash to denote that we are going to action, right? That is a reminder of our humility. And I actually do try to practice. I do try to think of, one day I'll be gone. And I'm not worried about the prospect. That's actually, sometimes it bothers people around me because I am, I'm going around and I'm not worried about that much about COVID. And people tell me, maybe you should be worried more. And I say, well, I'm not worried about death. And that bothers people. But I'm truly not worried about death. Actually, I'm truly not afraid to die. And that is a liberating thought, because once you are in that state, you actually have a kind of power that comes in you. That is what is spirituality ultimately about. That we accept that you're not going to be around. That means that the universe will go on. I'm part of that universe. So that is how I think about it. That's what our spirituality really teaches us, to me. But I'm not all that religious in the sense. I'm not a very ritualistic person. I've never actually been very fond of rituals. So I'm not conventionally extremely religious in that sense. But I'm actually I would call myself a spiritual person still.
Right. We're just approaching the last 5 minutes. So I'm just taking the last few questions that are coming in. One is about, Zoho Fresh.
I think I lost you there. Can you?
Yeah. Sridhar, this was about the code battle between. Yeah, this was about the code battle between Zoho and Freshworks. People want to know if there's some way of resolving this, since both of you are entrepreneurs from the same region and did a lot to develop SaaS. So where do you see that?
I would hope so. I would hope we would be able to resolve it. See, we are not itching for we are not a litigious company, but the matter is in court, but we hope to resolve it in some way. So.
Yeah. Sridhar, also, you mentioned that you're leading efforts in the village to produce what we consume. So I just wanted to get
Yeah.
your broader thoughts on the way the government has been championing Atmanirbhar Bharat. Do you think we are going in the right direction? And do you believe that India has a chance here to kind of claim the 21st century, like how America was able to claim the 20th century and how China has been able to claim the last few decades?
Yeah.
Where do you see India's potential?
Yeah. Uh, First, I want to say, yeah, this is a great direction for us. We want to be able to rely on ourselves for a lot more of our and trade on much more equal terms. In other words, if we import 5G equipment, maybe we sell medical equipment. So we have to have some kind of a symmetry of trade. That is very important for us. We cannot sell iron ore and buy steel. That's a very colonial pattern of trade, and that's not good for us. It's good for any nation. And then coming to this whole thing of who's the number one, I don't really want that obsessive focus on calling who's the number one, number two country, all of those, because it hasn't really, I mean, take America. What does number one country really mean? What is the meaning of having 190 military bases? Does it make the average American in New York City any happier that the thought that they have military bases all over the world? So that those are the kinds of things I think we have to know. The true spirituality is to accept that we are a nation. We don't want to be governing everybody. We don't want to be governed by anybody else either. We want to have a peaceful relationship with our neighbors, with everyone around the world. But there's no point in having this, this original, this thing, this imperial notions of who's the number one. So I really hope that India will set a new model for the world where how to be a happy society that's contented, that's large, peaceful, and contented. That is how we should be. That's the society we want to aspire to be.
Right. Last 2 minutes. A lot of questions on how they can get in touch with you. So as Sridhar mentioned earlier, just try tweeting to him on Twitter. He is active sometimes he's not, but he's mostly active. So I think you will get a response from him. But Sridhar, finally, I know you said it's not about being number one, number two, but do you believe that right now the policies that we have in place, the directions that we have, that you are confident about India's potential? We set some steep targets with respect to GDP and economy and per capita. Can we really aspire to that?
Yeah.
Because we are entering our 75th year of independence next year.
Yeah, we definitely can aspire to it, but I'll say this. I actually put the burden on very much on the private sector. It is for us in the private sector to rise to the occasion now. The government has actually, that's something that I've always been saying, by the way. The reason is that we don't want to excessively focus on what the government can do, what the government should do, all of those, because that is, there are things, I'll give you an example. The government is not actually preventing us from excelling in making Zoho meeting better. There's no barrier to that. We could write better code and make Zoho meeting really awesome. The government is not actually telling us not to do it, right? So this is actually true in many, many segments. Not everywhere. There are still some barriers in manufacturing, all of that. And they are the heart is in the right place. The policymakers do want to, definitely at the highest levels, policymakers want to do the right thing. But the private sector and the citizens have to rise to the occasion. I actually don't want to make it only a government problem, because it becomes excessively, and that also, see, it also becomes a political scorekeeping, and every wiggle, every squiggle in the economy, I'm going to blame the prime minister, I'm going to blame this. That's not a useful way to think about it, because there's a lot of forces that impinge on the economy that, we cannot blame any one person for all of the forces that are happening. But I actually think that the private sector has to rise to the occasion collectively, and there is a lot of energy in this country. There's a lot of youth. There's a lot of talent. If we do this, India definitely can rise. All those targets are definitely achievable, but it's in the private sector's hands.
Right, that's an optimistic note to end on. But Sridhar, very quickly, do you invest in startups? Someone wanted to know what's the best way to get funding from you in case they are interested.
Very rarely, we are investing so much in a lot of R&D projects that a lot of our own profits go into that, and all these rural initiatives, all of these. So we are we tend to actually, we don't accumulate a lot of cash. We tend to spend it on a lot of our own investments internally in various R&D. We are actually working on a variety of R&D projects. And then on top of this, rural, and then the hospital that we announced recently, a lot of things we are doing, educational initiatives, all of these. Because I look at our responsibility also as broader than merely business that sell product. We also have to provide for the communities we are in. Broader, this whole notion of corporate social responsibility, we take that seriously. We don't take that as just something the government mandates us, because even if the government did not mandate us, we still have a responsibility to our broader community. So I'm in this village, I have a responsibility to this village. Okay, it is absolutely true. And I'm being the richest person in this village. I do have a responsibility back to the society, to give back to the society. So to train youth, to guide people, all of those. So those we take seriously, and we are investing in a lot of these priorities right now. So we along the way, we actually invest in some startups very rarely. I don't, partly because I actually don't have the time to be a kind of an investor in all this, because I'm actively running a company and we are doing these managing all these projects. So I actually don't have the time to go and weigh in on this, and we don't have a kind of a VC arm or any of that. Partly because, again, to me, the incentives of the way that we have always backed companies is similar to our model, where that may stay private indefinitely. There is no exit. And we actually think that just flourish in your business. That is the mandate I give them. Flourish in your business. And I'm not expecting the money out of this, but I want the flourishing company that we have created. That's what I want out of it. So that is how we do it.
Right. Right. On that note, Sridhar, I must thank you profusely. Thank you very much for joining us all the way from Tenkasi. And I hope we've addressed most of the questions. People want to know if there will be a recording. There will be a recording. We will be uploading it on YouTube. So if you missed some of the initial parts or you didn't get some of the questions answered, I think we covered most of it. So you can check those out there. But thank you very much, Sridhar. And hopefully this will inspire many people who are logged in to become Atmanirbhar entrepreneurs like you and have an impact on the immediate community that they work in. And it will inspire the youth of this country. On that note, thank you very much for joining us, Sridhar. And Sridhar's teammates have also been adding their contact details on the... Yeah, their details, they have also been adding their contact details for Zoho schools and their partner programs. So perhaps you can look that up in the chat window as well. Yeah. But thank you very much for joining. Thank you so much.
I'll end on a little note. There are some peacocks that come every day expecting to be fed here. We have to feed them. So I know my feeding time for the peacocks.
Can you show us the peacocks? We'd love to see them.
Yeah, I'll see it. Yeah, I'll show it. I'll see it where I can.
Okay, that's his home office right there.
So that's actually, they were giving me the sound just now and they just went away. So
yeah, I think a few people said they could hear the peacocks in the background. That's an amazing environment to work in.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. So they come every day at this time expecting food.
Someone is saying you have a picture of Murugan behind you and then the sound of the peacocks near you. So that's quite auspicious.
What a coincidence. What a remarkable thing actually. So
yeah.
Yes, truly that is the environment I'm in right now. So they come every day, these peacocks. Yeah. So thank you.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Oh, there. Is that a peacock?
No. You can hear that. No. You can hear them, but you cannot see them right now. So.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for joining us on this webinar. And as promised, you can catch the link on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.